Good day. Excuse me, everyone. Good day. Mr. Lopez, your science teacher, here again for chapter 3, unit on traits and reproduction. Let's get to it, folks. And remember, always wash your hands. Very important. So remember that we are working for a company. We are genetic engineers, and we are breeding spiders that will produce offspring with the trait for medium silk flexibility. So as you can see here, we've been focusing on Darwin bark spiders, and this is their family tree. And we noticed, in several chapters that they contain 3 different types of silk flexibility: high, medium, and low. In order to help researchers, we need to determine why the Darwin's bark spiders' offspring have different traits for silk flexibility. And that's the why. The researchers sent new data about the offspring's gene versions. Remember that we created models in the previous lesson that predicted these gene versions. We've done activities as well on modifying genes. Therefore giving us the name genetic researchers. So here are the different gene versions, and we have here we have a offspring, or a spider. These are all babies that came from a mother spider and father spider. And as you can see here, this offspring A, that would be the oldest spider in the family, and this would be the youngest, offspring D, and these would be the middle children, B and C. And we have low silk flexibility, and we have we have the same type of protein molecules. We have, and since they are the same, we refer to them as F1, F1. If you notice, this one here is also F1, but it's from offspring B, which contains medium silk flexibility. So this is also the same, F1. We have a different protein molecule here. So let's put that in a different color. Let's do green. So for F2, we will mark it in green. And here's F2 again. And notice the F2s look the same. They have the same type of pattern. And we have F1 again. F1. And notice offspring A and offspring C, and how they both have the same type of molecules, protein molecules, F1, F1. Just want you to notice these two here, right? Same protein molecules, right? F1, F1, and the same pattern, and they both contain low silk flexibility. And we have offspring D, which has high silk flexibility. It's the only one in the family that has high silk flexibility. And we also noticed that it has a protein molecule that is different from the rest. Maybe this is what gives it its high silk flexibility. Let's continue. We've learned that spiders' traits vary because they have different proteins in their cells. We also know that genes are instructions for proteins. However, we still don't know why the Darwin bark spider's offspring have different gene combinations, even though they have the same parents. So chapter 3 question is, why do the Darwin's bark spider offspring have different gene combinations, even though they have the same parents? And we have a list of claims here, and we're going to investigate these claims. Notice that they have been revised to reflect what we've learned so far. For the question is, why do traits for silk flexibility vary within the family? So we took a look at the 4 different spiders about 2 slides earlier, and we noticed that they all had different silk flexibility, right? So why is that? That's the question we're trying to answer. So we have 3 different claims here. The offspring have mutations that affect their traits. The offspring's traits depend on which parent the offspring receive more copies of genes from, or the offspring receive different combinations from their gene parents. Which claim or claims did you find most convincing? And what else do you need to know to support one of these claims? So of the 3 claims, what I'd like for you to do is find one that you think is the most convincing reasoning as to why traits for the silk flexibility vary, or why are they so different within the family of bark spiders. So the investigation question is there. How do organisms get their genes? We're going to be reading an article titled, Why Are Identical Twins Rare? And we know that everyone is different. We can recognize one another's faces because every face is unique, with different combinations of traits like eye color, skin color, the shape of your nose, and so on. All these differences are called variation. And all these differences are called variation. Where does variation come from? That's going to be the question that we're going to be answering with this reading. So we're going to be annotating Why Are Identical Twins Rare? The article, where we will be looking for challenging words. As we find those challenging words, we try to locate them in the back of our workbook, and we look for main ideas. And I will most likely make a separate video to help you annotate. All right, so annotations help keep track of and remember our thinking. So it's very important for us when we are looking at this article and when we're reading it to have some sort of instrument to write with, a pencil, a pen, a highlighter, if possible. And what interesting or unanswered questions do you still have about the article? So we should have taken the time, or you should have paused the video, or pause the video now and read the article that is in the back of our Traits and Reproduction book. And the article is located most likely after the hemophilia. No, actually it's not. There it is. E1. So you'll find it there. It's E1. That is where you'll find the page. And you don't necessarily have to read it now. I mean, you can pause the video, and when you have some time, let's say you're bored, you're sitting in bed and you're tired of looking at the screen on your phone, and so, it'd be nice to just read, or maybe go outside of the backyard or to the front and just do some reading. Okay, it's fun. And any words that you don't understand, you can just underline. Then later on, when you have your phone in your hand, you can actually look the words up and maybe click images and see what they're referring to. That's a good trick that a lot of students use. So, inherit. To inherit is to receive the genes from a parent. So, there are certain genes that you inherit from your parents, and it's passed down to the family's offspring. We know that genes provide instructions for making proteins, which determine an organism's traits. In the last lesson, we read an article to learn how organisms get their genes. And here's that investigation question again. How do organisms get their genes? How did you get your genes? Organisms inherit their genes through sexual reproduction. So, yeah, you are a product of your parents, and that's how you inherit your genes. Today, you're going to reread a part of the article, Why Are Identical Twins Rare? To better understand how organisms inherit their genes through sexual reproduction. And we're going to reread and annotate the second and third paragraphs of how we get our genes. So a very important part of our reading will be this here, how we get our genes. And that is located on page E2. Page E2. And we're really going to be looking closely at this diagram that you see there. And we're going to be talking about that. Okay? And there it is again. So we're going to be paying attention to this diagram and annotating it to help us answer the investigation question. So these cells are egg cells from your mother. And these are egg cells, sperm cells from your father. And these are all the different combinations, different possible offspring with different types of combination of genes. So there are certain amounts of probability involved in, whether you're going to inherit your mom's, eye color, or your dad's height, or your mother's nose, or your dad's ears. So that's there are many different combinations, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. So we should have found our copy by now of the book, and rereading the second and third paragraphs of how we get our genes, and doing further investigation regarding that. So the question remains: how do organisms get their genes? You get it from your parents. Both parents create reproductive cells, and reproductive cells have half of the genetic material of a normal cell. In other words, reproductive cells only contain one copy of a gene. And during fertilization, the reproductive cells combine to form a new offspring. The new offspring will have two copies of each gene, one from each parent. Remember, we are investigating how organisms get their genes so we can help explain why traits for silk flexibility vary within the spider family. And now that we know a little more about how organisms inherit their genes, we're going to take a closer look at claim number 2, which reads, the offspring's traits depend on which parent the offspring received more copies of genes from. So I'm going to want you to do something very simple. Go to page 65 in the book. Okay. And very simply, I want you to circle claim number 2. That's all. So just circle claim number 2 and turn in your work to Schoology. That might be the easiest assignment you've ever done. So you're going to circle claim number 2 on page 65 and you're going to turn it in. Easy one, right? People often think that an offspring looks more like one parent because that offspring received more genes from one parent over the other. So you might have heard that at some point. You look more like your mother than your father, or you look more like your father than your mother. Yeah. So do you think this is true? Can organisms inherit a great number of genes from one parent? We're going to use the sim to examine how offspring inherit genes through the process of reproduction. So let's see if this will help us support or refute our claim number 2. First, we're going to watch a demonstration of the activity focusing on evidence about genes and traits for the bristle feature. Then you'll use the same steps to gather evidence about the body color feature. In the demonstration, Otis and Anne will be mated. You should carefully observe both parents' genes and their offspring to determine if offspring can inherit more genes from one parent. What do you notice about Otis and Anne's traits and gene versions for the bristle feature? Well, we know that this is referring to the bristle feature. So we have Anne here, and we have Otis. And Anne has dense bristle hairs. So you notice there, Anne has a good amount of hair on her body. Dense. Has lots of hair. And sparse. Otis has sparse amounts of hair on his body. He's a male, right? And we know that there are spiders that don't have any hair. So this would have, Otis would have some hair and Anne would have a lot of hair. And that's what we notice. During the demonstration, data will be recorded. We're going to record some data. Yes, I love recording data. And we're going to be recording data for Otis and Anne's offspring in this data table. So Anne and Otis will have babies. They'll have baby spiders. They will reproduce. They will mate. And we're going to record their possible offspring. Otis and Anne's traits are shown at the bottom for reference. And here we go.
So let's see how this is going to work here in the sim. And then we're going to record some data here together. So I am going to go ahead and turn on our feature that we're going to use as an example, which is bristle. And again, I'm looking here at Anne and Otis. Anne is with her dense trait for bristle and her R1 gene version. and Otis is here for his sparse trait for this bristle feature, and his gene variation or gene version for R1, R2. I'm going to go ahead and mate two of them. And before I actually create their reproductive cells, I want to point out a couple of things that we notice here. Number one, Otis's genes here are green and Anne's are purple to help us see where these genes are then going as they pass them along to their offspring. And then we also have labeled on them the particular gene versions that both Otis and Anne have. So in this pair of chromosomes here, Otis has the gene versions R1 and R2, and Anne has R1 and R1. So I'm going to go ahead and create the reproductive cells. And once again, notice how in the reproductive cells for both Otis and Anne, there's only one of each of these chromosome pairs. So up in the nucleus of the original parent cell for both Anne and Otis, there are paired chromosomes, and now they are unpaired in the nuclei of Otis's sperm and of Anne's eggs. So I'm going to now press randomly fertilize. And here is our information for our offspring that we are going to record in this data table. So offspring 1, we want the gene version from Otis, the gene version from Anne, the offspring's total gene versions, as well as the bristle trait. Okay. Well, here, this first one, the first code is going to represent what came from Otis because it's on the left and Otis is on the left. The second one is going to be from Anne because Anne's over here on the right, and that code is second on the right. So that's just something that you're going to need to be aware of today as you complete this mission. So spider 1 here, offspring 1, is R1, R1, with the first R1 coming from Otis and the second R1 coming from Anne. So I'm going to go ahead and record that information in our data table here. And R1. And offspring 1 has the gene versions of R1, R1, and the trait of dense bristle. I'm going to repeat this process here for offspring 2. First one listed is R2, so that came from Otis. Second one listed is R1, that came from Anne. This gene versions of this offspring is R2, R1. And our trait here is sparse for this feature of bristle. Again, offspring 3. First one listed is R2, that came from Otis. Second one listed is R1, that came from Anne. This offspring has R2, R1 gene versions. And our trait for bristle is sparse. And lastly, offspring 4. R1, the first one listed, that came from Otis. So again, the first one listed there on the left is going to come from the male parent. R2, the second one listed, that came from Anne, or I'm sorry, R1, the second one listed, came from Anne, one of her R1s. So this offspring has the gene versions of R1, R1, and the trait of dense.
All right, folks. Let me get out of this screen here. Okay.
So let's see how this is going to work.
Okay. So the demonstration you just saw focused on the bristle feature. So next, we're going to use the same steps to gather evidence in the sim about body color feature. So what we're going to do is do the same activity that we just saw, except we will be focusing on body color. the body color feature, and we will be using Otis and Ann. And we will be mating Otis and Ann, and they will reproduce 4 different offspring. And we will then come up with their results. So we're going to need to use the simulation again and make sure that we're on page 73. So there's Mr. Lopez again. So let's head over to page 73. Okay. And on page 73, we have instructions on how to do this activity. And this is done on your own. And Mr. Lopez will most likely put together a separate video to help you put all of that information together. Okay? All right. Let's get all that off the screen. Are the offspring's traits the same as or different from the parent's traits? And do any of the offspring have a gene version that is not present in either parent? For each offspring, where did the copies of each gene come from? So these are all great questions. Are some of the offspring's traits the same or different? And do any offspring have any gene version that is not present in either parent? For each offspring, where do the copies of each gene come from? Great questions. We probably noticed that in the sim, the offspring only have gene versions that were present in their parents. One copy came from Otis and another one came from Ann. So what do you think now? Do you agree or disagree with claim 2? The offspring's traits depend on which parent the offspring receive more copies of genes from. So next we're going to need a partner to discuss the evidence that we have gathered from the sim as well as from the article. Why are identical twins rare? And we're going to discuss how this evidence supports or refutes. That means does not make a good claim, gets rid of. When you refute, you're getting rid of it. It doesn't work. When you're supporting it, you're keeping it, you're holding it. It's reliable. What evidence do we have that supports or refutes claim 2? Should we continue to investigate claim 2 or should we eliminate? Each parent randomly passes on one of its 2 copies of each gene to its offspring. So you get 2 copies of each gene from your offspring. So you get 2 genes from mom, 2 from dad, and from your father, and that is all. You don't get any more. You get 2 copies of each gene. Through sexual reproduction, an offspring inherits 2 copies of each gene, one from each parent. These genes are instructions for making protein molecules, which interact to determine the offspring's trait. So what we can do is eliminate claim number 2 because it says here the offspring's traits depend on which parent the offspring receive more copies of, and we already know you get 1 copy from mom and you get another copy from your father. You don't get any more. You don't get 5 more from your mom, and so therefore you get more traits from your mom. It doesn't work that way. Okay, I hope that made sense. But yes, so claim 2, we can get rid of that. And now that we know how organisms inherit their genes from their parents, we'll look at why spider offspring have different traits for silk flexibility, even though they have the same parents. And hold on one second, Mr. Lopez may have Okay, so now we're going to be looking at stickiness. Let me back it up here. I thought I was on the wrong track, but we're okay. So today we're going to make spiders in the sim and predict the gene versions the spider offspring will have. So again, we're going to use our simulation and we will see the predictions that a student Luna made for the offspring of Greg and Anne. Then we will compare her predictions to results from the sim. Before we look at Luna's predictions, so Luna, she's a student, and Luna is going to be making predictions about the offspring for Anne and Greg in regards to the stickiness, stickiness of silk. And as you can see here, we have Greg and Anne. And Greg and Anne, they both have sticky silk. You know, one's male, the other one's female, right? And if you look at their protein molecule structure, S1, S2, S1, S2. So when it comes to stickiness, not the amount of hair, not their color, we're not looking at the color stripes that they both have. We're only looking at when they produce silk, it's both sticky. So what do you think their offspring will have? If they both mate and they have spider babies, what type of trait would they have when it comes to stickiness? Remember, there are some spiders that don't produce any silk that's sticky. But if both your parents have have a stickiness trait, what would that mean? So these are the predictions that Luna made. Notice that she predicted that the offspring will inherit one gene copy from each parent. That gene copy could be either S1 or S2 because both parents have S1 and S2 gene versions. So here's the combination, first combination. These are 4, right? Let's take a good look at these closely. So these are spider 1, this is spider 2, this is spider 3, this is baby spider 4. So 4 baby spiders that Greg and Anne had. You know, they mated, they reproduced, and these are the different combinations. And the combinations, notice here there is no S3, there's only S1 and S2. So we have combination of S1, S1, combination of S1, S2, S2, S1, and S2, S2. Which one of these are very different? Well, gene combination D, this spider here produced S2, S2, which is different. And so is gene combination A, if you notice, S1 and S1. These two, combinations B and C, they are similar to their parents. So we're going to head over to page 77. And we're going to be writing all of this information down. We're going to launch the sim, and we're going to be jotting down the data. Next, we're going to watch a video showing Greg and Anne being mated in the sim. As you watch, compare the results to Luna's predictions on the previous slide. So those were Luna's predictions. Luna is a student, and she was guessing the predictions of Greg and Anne's offspring. So now we're gonna launch the sim and see what they come up with.
So here I have Greg and here I have Anne. Again, I'm selected for silk stickiness and I have their gene versions listed. So let's mate them. And I'm going to hit randomly fertilize now that I've created their reproductive cells. And here are the 4 offspring that we created from this particular mating of Greg and Anne. So spider 1 has the trait of sticky for this silk stickiness feature. And this spider has S2, S1 gene version combination. Spider 2 also has a sticky silk stickiness trait. And in spider 2, this spider's gene combination or gene versions here is S1, S1. Spider 3 here, again, sticky silk, S1, S1 again. And here in spider 4, sticky, again, S1, S1. So here.
Okay. Here we go. So here are the results from the sim. Compare the results to Luna's predictions. I believe Luna had a combination of S2 and S2, and I don't see it here. That's the only one that she did not predict. She predicted this one. She predicted this one. I don't think she would have predicted that the offspring would be exactly the same. These are exactly the same, right? And this third one is exactly the same. So these all 3 of these same. And so S2 and S2 are different. I believe there was another one that is not here that Luna predicted. Notice that the offspring did not have every possible gene combination because the copy that is inherited from each parent is random. Notice that this time the offspring have different combinations of gene versions, but they are still combinations that Luna predicted. So all of the offspring produced stickiness, and there was one that she predicted that was not going to be sticky, and that was S2, S2, which ended up not being the case. They all came out sticky. And now we're going to look at another pair of spiders and a different feature called body color. So we're going to be looking at body color. And before looking at the sim, we're going to first make predictions. So we're going to turn to page 78. And we're going to make predictions on page 78. So On page 78, you're going to make predictions about the possible combinations for Otis and Ruby. All right, and I'm going to walk you through that. And then on page 79, you will be working on page 79. You will then run the tests, run 2 tests to see what results you come up with. You're going to jot down the data and then see if your predictions were correct. And here is Otis and Ruby, and as you can see, one is male and the other one is female, so they can reproduce. And one has a brown color, brown colored spider, and the other one is a yellow colored spider. If they were to mate and have a baby, what color do you think that the baby would come out? Offspring A. If they had 2 babies, if they had 2 offspring, what color would that spider be? 3 and 4. We're going based off of 4 each time. Next, we're going to compare our predictions to results from the sim. So after Otis and Ruby are mated, record the offspring's gene versions and body color in the tables. So on page 79, we're going to look at the results. On page 78, we're making predictions, and then on page 79, we're going to run the simulation and see what combination of gene versions come out. So what traits and gene combinations did you observe in the offspring? Did you observe offspring with a different color than both parents? Next, we're going to need a partner to talk with using the prompts on the next 2 slides. You and your partner are going to discuss the results from the sim and how the sim helps you to answer the investigation question. So now that we have investigated how sexual reproduction can lead to variation, you will annotate a model and apply what you've learned. So we have a model here on, it's a venom inheritance model. And we notice that these are the gene versions. And we have a mother and a male and a female, and they produce 3 different offspring. And they contain gene versions V1 and V2. They both contain venom, as you can see. So they end up producing 2 offspring in which venom. They produce venom that is venomous, that kills, and one that stuns. So we're going to annotate the model to explain how each spider offspring received those gene versions and proteins. That is on page 80, and you will be submitting that to Schoology. Remember, we're investigating the variation within the spider family. The spider offspring have different traits from each other, and some even have different traits from their parents. So does this evidence that you gathered today support or refute claim 1 or claim 3? The evidence that we have supports claim 3. The offspring received different combinations of gene versions from their parents. So we've gathered evidence that sexual reproduction each offspring can inherit a different combination of gene versions. Therefore, siblings can have different traits from each other and even from their parents. And that is all, folks. Thank you very much. You guys have been great. You guys have been awesome. I will, I guess, see you on the next lesson, the next show, the next episode, chapter 4, where we look at why is Jackie an elite distance runner when no one else in her family has that trait. So this is what we're going to be investigating for Chapter 4. For Chapter 4, why is Jackie an elite distance runner when no one else in her family has that trait? And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care, you guys. Be safe.